Welcome back to KBC News Check, and on this second hour we are looking at child welfare and rights, and I'll be joined by a family lawyer and advocate of the High Court and also a trustee of the Child Welfare Society of Kenya. But you know, it has been there even before we acquired independence in 1963. We'll be knowing more about that. But the reason we have chosen this topic is in regards to the welfare of these kids, is that following a cabinet meeting a couple of weeks ago that also decided that some of the government agencies are going to be collapsed, others will be merged. We want to know exactly how the child welfare associations going to be affected in regards to this. And another thing, some of the rights the children have, are we protecting them? Just as we have said in our discussion there in regards to matters cancer, we need all to be pulling together. That is a discussion that we will be having in the next 45 minutes, 50 minutes or so. So welcome to the program. And allow me now to bring in or rope in my panel of experts, beginning from my immediate left. We have Mupa Mbetsa.
It is
Mupa Mbetsa. Mupa Mbetsa is an advocate of the High Court and also a family lawyer. Karibu sana.
Thank you so much.
Just next to her, we have Bwana Bill Rutto. Bwana Bill Rutto is a trustee at the Child Welfare Society of Kenya. Ladies and gentlemen, karibuni.
Thank you
for having us.
First things first, and I hope you don't mind me asking this question. You worked with one of the most, for lack of a better word, magnificent lawyers that we've had, or senior counsels. Maybe you can share that with Kenyans as well.
My name is Mupa Mbetsa, an advocate of the High Court of Kenya, currently practicing family law at Judith Ongori and Company Advocates. As mentioned, she was an icon, a trailblazer in the field, and we honor her legacy by doing what she loved most, protecting the rights of the children and the family in Kenya. Thank you.
Bwana Bill,
yes,
tell us something about Child Welfare Society of Kenya, because I remember I joined school way back in 1986, and the school that I joined was just next to the headquarters of Child Welfare Society of Kenya in Embu. And one thing I noticed is that there are some students, we were in school together, but they were not going home. They were going to
the Child Welfare,
to the Child Welfare Society of Kenya. We were not able to understand, but later on I came to understand that some of these kids didn't have families, or families that were not able to really take care of them and also take them to school.
Absolutely. So, Child Welfare Society of Kenya, as many people would know, is an old organization which was started way back in the 1950s. Actually, the idea to start child welfare began around 1952. And then in 1955, it was registered by the British, by the colonial government. This was basically to look after the children arising from various challenges that came from, if you recall, the Mau Mau emergency. There were many children that fell off the social networks. So the government wanted to take care of these children. And therefore, some of the leaders that time, led by Humphrey Slade, who was a member of the Legislative Council, came up with this idea that let's set up this organization whereby it can serve the purpose of protecting and caring for these children on behalf of government. So from then, it was established and started operations. And to make it even more effective, the governor then of Kenya at the time was made the patron of Child Welfare Society of Kenya, which has continued to date.
And we are talking about before independence.
Absolutely. So that governor became the patron, and after independence, the prime minister, the first prime minister, Jomo Kenyatta, became the patron. 1964, when we had Republican status, he became the president and became the patron, and President Daniel Arap Moi, President Kibaki, President Uhuru Kenyatta, and the current president. So they are all patrons of child welfare for the simple purpose that, for the simple reason that, you know, these children who are disadvantaged, who are vulnerable, and those who have no home, like you've just said, when you're growing up, when you're schooling back in Embu, child welfare provides them an alternative place where they can actually temporarily be, you know, nurtured, go to school, provide them shelter, health, and things like that, so that they ultimately become useful citizens of this country. So that is what child welfare has been doing, and it has developed over time many programs.
Okay. You will be telling us a lot about the programs that you've had. We're talking about over 70 years ago. 70 years ago,
absolutely. Yes.
Wakili, what are the rights of children as enshrined in the 2010 Constitution and other charters like the UN Charter? We have a number of conventions who sat down and drafted some of the regulations on how we are supposed to be.
Indeed, we do. We have the Constitution of Kenya of 2010, as you mentioned, under Article 53, providing for the rights of children. And children have a variety of rights. They have a right to a name and nationality from birth. They have a right to protection and parental responsibility. And this is specifically important to mention that regardless of whether the parents of this child are married, they each have an equal responsibility to take care of this child. Children have a right to basic compulsory education. They have a right to be protected from abuse, neglect, or any harmful or cultural practices such as FGM and early child marriages. And this is not only enshrined in the Constitution and international charters, like you said. We have an amended Children's Act of 2022, which provides for a myriad of rights for children, including children with disabilities, children in conflict with the law, among others. Yes, we do.
Bwana Rutto, I'm looking at Child Welfare Society of Kenya over 70 years. What are some of the programs that you've had and are currently having?
Like I was telling you, the program started small, few of them, and as society evolves, social issues come up, and child welfare responds by formulating new programs which are specialized to deal with the uniqueness of the situations that arise. So as we speak right now, we have as many as 18 programs which we have developed over time.
Covering a total of how many children are you looking at?
Right now we have not less than 700,000 children from across the country.
That's a lot.
Yeah, who are involved, who are actually protected and cared for through these 18 different programs. Yeah, so, and we have outreach across the entire country. We have our presence in the all 47 counties.
In every county you have a child where
we have a presence there in one way or another. And then we have also what we call sites. So you can find in one specific county, for example, Nairobi, we have 4 sites. We have one in South Sea, we have another one in Karen. We have actually 2 in Karen. We have in a place called Waithaka. We have like that now. So that's why we have ultimately 120 sites across the 47 counties of Kenya. And each county has its own uniqueness, and therefore the programs that are there also are tailor-made to cater for situations that arise that affect children, care and protection. Yeah.
And there's something that you mentioned, Wakili, that about children with disabilities or special needs.
Yeah.
How are the rights of these special children protected? And are they being adequately involved and in actually making sure that not only are we taking care of our children's rights, we are also taking care of rights of children with special needs or disabilities?
Indeed, we do. The Children's Act of 2022, like I mentioned, provides children's rights, not only those living with disability, but otherwise as well. And Section 20 is quite elaborative as to the kind of rights these children deserve. So they have a right, other than the rights every other child should get: parental care, name and nationality, leisure. They have a right to be treated with dignity and care. They have a right to be accorded specialized treatment, and the state should be providing this for free. And not only that, the state should be establishing specialized institutions or organizations that ensure the rights of these children are protected. As to whether that is adequately catered to, it could be different for different people. Some people prefer going the private way, but we think the government is also trying in funding public spaces or public institutions for these children who are living with disability to be taken care of and to be treated with the dignity they deserve.
Let me pick from where she's left. A couple of weeks ago, the cabinet decided that some of government agencies are going to be collapsed and others be merged or actually be done away with altogether. Will Child Welfare Society of Kenya be affected by these new changes?
Yeah, I saw, of course, on that list.
Yeah, and I think I saw an article you had written in the newspapers.
Yes.
On what exactly would happen if at all government did pull out from this
absolutely,
support.
because if you look at that list, child welfare was at the bottom there, and we are tempted to think that actually it was there by accident, for lack of a better word to use for that, because child welfare, first of all, could not be compared with those entities that appeared on that list, because first of all, we are not a professional body. We are not. We were simply a different organization that does work for government. We are an agency. The way Red Cross would be doing work for government during emergencies, we also handle things to do with children. Over these 70 years, we have always done that, and the government funds those programs through child welfare. In other words, the funding is not to child welfare. It is to the programs which are tailored to protect and care for these children. And therefore, I have a feeling that there's a mistake somewhere, which I do believe in the fullness of time we'll be able to have a conversation with the government to clarify these things, so that these children, these 700,000 children plus, do not suffer, because these programs have been developed over time, and therefore I can't imagine overnight these children having nowhere to go. You know, in the child protection ideology, there are certain things that have to be done by specialists, experts, you know, who have developed programs like ours now, specialization. We have the flexibility also to do things. We respond to emerging issues in society, and we tailor-made all these programs, which I can't imagine them not being done as a result of the stoppage. Stoppage of
and
this program.
I'm looking at 700,000 children at the moment.
Yes.
And the government pulling out would mean what? Where do we take these children?
That is a good question, because it is that's what I'm saying. I'm very confident that the government cannot do that, because.
But they listed the Child Welfare Society of Kenya as one of the agencies.
Huh?
They did list Child
Yes,
Welfare Society of Kenya.
But that's what I'm saying. There ought to be some discussions, some clarifications, so that it cannot be put together with the institutions that appear to be redundant or not effective in whatever way the government has seen in that reform. You see, like I was reading that particular release, that the government was looking at issues to do with even pending bills, which go, I think, up to 94.4 billion. which were incurred by some of these institutions. And therefore, to rationalize some of these things was to collapse some of them, merge some of them, and deregister or declassify, as they were putting it, some of them. So, and I don't think child welfare have been involved in that sort of, pending bills issues and things like that, because the funding that comes from government goes directly to the stomach and mouths of these children, directly. In fact, child welfare is not a beneficiary of these funds. It is simply a facilitator of these programs which are funded by government. The children, these vulnerable children, being the children of the government, so to speak, is the children of Kenya. And child welfare happened to have been established to actually handle this thing as an expert organization. The way a contract, take for example, if you're constructing a road like expressway here, the ministry in charge of roads and public works does not construct the expressway. It gives it to a contractor who is an expert. Similarly, issues to do with children, these are very delicate and extremely involving issues which can only be handled by specialized organization, which the wisdom of the founders of child welfare was that this entity will hold the hand of government in ensuring that these children are protected and cared for throughout by experts. And remember, issues to do with children require expertise, which even Kenya trains social workers from even neighboring countries. That is to say, we are a leader in this. And therefore, child welfare is actually the home of this expertise. And then another thing I may add also is that with our programs, we are also community-based in the sense that we are embedded in communities whereby we are working with programs that are sensitive to cultural issues of various communities, which if anybody else who is not an expert were to step in, would just be going to communities on an ad hoc basis. But as we live and protect children and care for them within that. And then we also have the issue of partnership and collaboration with other entities in the world. Like we have what you call International Social Services, ISS, of which child welfare is a member. This membership helps us to also have issues to do with best practices. We learn from them as well. They learn from us. And therefore, we also strengthen and deepen our expertise in child protection. So I'm very confident that the government cannot want to do this.
The president is still the patron of the society, right?
Yeah, that is a significant thing you have said.
All right, let's hear from Wakili in regards to how do we ensure that the legal and social interventions matters FGM and matters also early marriages. I come from a community where it has been notorious for practicing FGM to date, and the issue of FGM has been popping up for years, but we have never been able to sort them out. Our pastoralist communities have issues when it comes to early marriages. These children need to be protected as well.
It's true. So legally, we have strong laws that allow or prevent, the institution of FGM. We have the Constitution itself. We have the Children's Act. Institutionally, we have children's courts, which are empowered to deal with any matters involving children. We also have the Prevention Against FGM Act of 2011, which creates certain measures that need to be taken to ensure that FGM is not practiced as rampant as it is in some high-risk areas, and that child marriages are actually reduced. We have NGOs that have come into place or into play to try and ensure that, again, this is curbed significantly to reduce FGM and early marriages. And we can do this even ourselves in the community by increasing awareness as to what happens when children have to go through some of these rights, which are very detrimental to them. We should be empowering girls especially to, you know, crave for education as opposed to early marriages, empower them economically as well, because you will realize that many girls are getting married early because of the financial constraints the family is facing. So if we could have cash programs like Inua Jamii that were already there to be increased funding rather and personnel to ensure that the kids don't have to get married, you know, in order to alleviate their families from poverty, and instead get a good education which will take them longer years and, you know, have better people in society. We also could increase the personnel who are detecting these things happening in the community. So the traditional circumcisers, they go into hiding, they're being protected by the community. We should allow the community to, you know, leach these people out, but provide witness protection for them so that they're not castrated or called out against calling out some of these circumcisers or the people, the men who are marrying these girls at a very young age for no reason. Yeah.
And the laws that we currently have, the Children Act and the Constitution, do they really, are they airtight enough to protect our girls from retrogressive cultural practices like FGM and early marriages? Something else I saw in a northern part of Kenya, where when a child is raped, that can be commuted with some goats or some camels or some... These are some of the things that are pulling us down in terms of actualizing the human rights of our children.
You will note that Kenya is among the countries with the best laws when it comes to protecting children.
On paper,
the laws are comprehensive. They say everything that should or shouldn't be done. Our problem comes with the enforcement of these laws. We have very limited personnel to be doing this, so they're not trained adequately as to how they should handle children's matters, which you will note are very sensitive. You will not handle a child the same way you will handle an adult. You will note that witness protection is not very provided for here in the country, and that will scare away or shy away some people from reporting some of these cases. Yeah, but we are also encouraging means of diversion for other crimes committed, not things like FGM or early marriages, but, you know, other petty crimes that children would commit. But what I'm trying to say is, if we increase funding and personnel in trying to enforce our laws better, then we should be good to go, because the laws are there in place. We cannot fault the legislators at all when it comes to children's laws. Everything is airtight. Things are good on paper, like you said, but we need to be able to, you know, enforce those laws, carry them out, implement these laws better.
I totally concur, and especially when it comes to FGM. I think you have something you also add.
Perhaps I can tie in something here. If you recall what I said about our presence within communities, whereby we develop programs that are sensitive to cultural issues, and the issue, as Mupa is saying, about you know, FGMs and things like that, those are cultural issues. So when we develop these programs, we try to steer the community away from this actually it's cruelty against children. It's actually child abuse. So we steer them away, because changes come through evolution, cultural evolution, and it comes when people see sense and benefit of abandoning certain cultural issues. So at Child Welfare, we have a program called Adolescents Reproductive Service, Health Service. So we use that program to now address issues such as the FGM issues, whereby we go there with a user-friendly face and try to make the community see the folly of engaging in those what the Constitution of Kenya calls harmful cultural practices against children. And therefore, there's progress going on there, actually. That's why more and more support from government has to be there in order to really make an impact.
And Rutto, how different is Child Welfare Society of Kenya from orphanages and children's home that we have seen? All of you are protecting the vulnerable.
Yes, the difference is, I told you the history of child welfare, how it is started, and child welfare is what you call an exempt society. Exempt means it is specialized to work for government, unlike any other society or any other registered, entity that protects the children. So it has a specialized relationship with government as an agency of government. Now, child welfare has what you can call, we call temporary places of safety, which is another word for children homes, like the one you're saying.
Yes.
You saw it when you were growing up. So this, why we call them temporary is that because it's supposed to sort out the issue of the child and possibly link back the child to the society, or if it's not possible, continue educating this child to university, to whatever, and then ultimately joins the rest of the society. So the difference is that it has a continuous way of doing this thing, linking back these children back to society, and also through tracing. You know, we trace where these children came from. Then we also, those who cannot find a home completely, we may also have, as a last resort, give them what we call alternative family care, which is like adoption, what we call guardianship, and foster care, in order also so they can have a taste of real life family environment. So the other institutions could be like, they work, of course, in collaboration with child welfare and others, because like when they have a certain number of children whom they cannot look after, they just offload them or download them to child welfare so that we can give them better facilities and better attention. Yeah.
And what measures are you taking to combat child labor, child abuse, because you are embedded in the community?
Yeah, we have programs on child labor specifically, and they address those issues. We educate the society. We empower parents of children who are inclined to let their children do labor instead of going to school. So we have a program of family empowerment where we give these families, what we call income generating activities. Fund them to do those who are interested in doing small kind of businesses, like maybe sale of mitumba and whatever. We finance them through that program so that they are able, because there's nobody in this world who wants their child to go away, So what we do, we empower the family, and the family will begin to take care of the child and withdraw the child from the child labor environment. So that's how we do it. Yeah.
How can we ensure that we strengthen accountability to ensure that those who violate any of the many children's rights and laws are put to book?
Like I said, our laws already have this in place. We have children's courts to be dealing with such offenses. But more than that is to increase awareness in the communities. Let us be more surveillant of people who are committing offenses against children, or children who are being in conflict with the law in the communities, and increase awareness and increase surveillance, to just ensure such cases are reported. Many times cases of abuse, neglect are not reported because of fear and stigma in the society. Not that it's not happening, it's happening, but people are afraid of coming out and saying so-and-so is doing this and this. Other than that, increase funding for the training of personnel, of the people who deal with children. Those are the specialized police unit, the Department of Children's Services, the children's courts under the judiciary, and all stakeholders involved. Organizations such as Save the Children, the Child Welfare Society, as Mr. Bill Rutto has said here. Increase funding to these programs so that the personnel and the resources that these children need specialized care and attention while in there, and so they need to be, protected and taken care of. And this can only happen once funding has been availed.
But Rutto, I've seen the US has pulled out of support many programs in the country, and especially in the health department. Yes. Are there any programs that are being supported by partners who could pull out, and what would you do if at all any of them pulled out? If at all there are some programs which are...
Well, I've heard of that, the latest news actually is about that.
Yes.
But we do not have any programs that are affected by USAID or United States government.
You're fully funded by the Exchequer?
Yes. Yes, absolutely. Like I was telling you, the programs we run are actually ultimately government programs that child welfare facilitates those programs in order to care and protect these children. So we are not really affected by that. Yeah, but funding, like what my colleague here is saying, we have the National Council of Children's Services, which is it's a statutory body, which is the regulator, and is the one that monitors and evaluates what entities like child welfare and others do, so that they become efficient and things like that. So funding must go to the council and to Children's Department and other entities that actually work as government agencies in child protection. So funding is very important. With US aid and whatever, we have nothing to do with it ourselves. Yeah.
And how has child welfare role do you play in ensuring that communities and also Kenyans are ardent in protecting children's rights and also positive parenting as well?
Yeah, we have all those programs. Like I told you, out of these 18 programs, we have those ones where we have these family strengthening programs, whereby any family that comes into kind of a situation where their children are threatened by various economic or social issues, we empower them to be able to understand both the rights of the child and the needs of the child, so that there's no issue of neglect, there's no issue of abuse. We do all that. We have programs for that, which we have proudly developed and worked for 70 years. So we are very much into that, and therefore everything is taken care of.
Wakili, how does the justice system handle children who come into conflict with the law? If I break the law, I will be arrested, I will be handcuffed, I will be put in a cell, maybe tomorrow I will be taken to court, and then I will be taken to industrial area. That cannot be the same way we treat our children. How do the justice system go about this?
Okay, so from the point of arrest or detention, first of all, detention comes as a last resort in any matters concerning children. This is provided for under Article 56 of the Constitution and Part 15 of the Children's Act, which deals with all the reasons or what could happen in terms of children coming in conflict with the law. But once a child comes in conflict with the law, one, they have a right to privacy. Just as the rights of an accused apply to an adult, they also have the same rights. Children cannot be detained in the same room as adults, and because of that, you also need to take into place their age, their gender, prior to them starting the proceedings, which happen in camera, meaning away from the public. These children have to go through a preliminary examination to see that, they are aware of what is happening, they know the kind of questions they'll be asked, and that they are able to answer. We also need to point out that any child or any person below the age of 12 years cannot be held criminally responsible for any act or omission that they would undertake. And so because of that, children are protected in that way. Also, there are many other things, such as diversion programs. Many times once a child has been found to be in conflict with the law, we will try and rehabilitate them back into society rather than detain them, because that's one of the reasons we're trying to bring back children into society. They're the natural fabric of the society, and it's very fundamental that they are protected in that way. And so because of that, children cannot be treated the same way as adults. Their matters are handled by specialized courts. Those are the children's courts. Their proceedings are conducted in private. They have a right to legal representation, just as adults do. And there can be no death penalty or life imprisonment when it comes to children, and they cannot suffer corporal punishment as adults do. And so there are many devices that have been calculated by the children's courts in ensuring that they are accorded their right to remain as children. And even though proceedings go on even after they've turned 18, because a child is anyone who's below the age of 18. They'll still be accorded the same rights as if they had not been adults as the commission was taking place.
Rutto, we're talking about all these children, and some of the children that you take care of for, like, as Child Welfare Society of Kenya, they also come from very hard backgrounds, you know. By hard, I mean some been crimes, some have been abused. How do you reintegrate them and later on reintegrate them back to the society?
Yeah, like I said, we have various programs. Like this one, we have what we call it, it is called family counseling, and you know, and mediation, whereby we bring all these kids now into this, support them, and also give them mental health care, you know, and things like that, so that they are able to become regular citizens. We undo the damage that has afflicted them over the years. So that's what we do with these programs to that effect.
And which institution, surely, we're talking about over 700,000 children.
Yes.
Which institution, if at all, this holds, and the government says, indeed, just like we said, child welfare will not be around anymore. Which institution could be able to handle 700,000 students? No, not students, children, because you're giving them food, water, education, mental health as well.
Okay, first of all, child welfare will be around. There's no question about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it has been there for 70 years. So maybe the funding. So now, your question, the answer to your question is, it is mind-boggling.
Yes.
It's very
because even if they cut funding, let's say it still remains, but they cut funding or reduce it, then we have a big mess.
Yeah, of course, like I told you, I want you to see the link directly from the funding and the children.
Yes.
You can even see child welfare as simply a facilitator. So the government is funding the children. It's not funding child welfare, really.
Yes.
No, it's funding
it's funding the children.
It's funding the children through the programs that we have developed over the years.
Yeah.
So if they remove funding, I can't imagine what they'll do with 700,000 children. You know, what's going to happen? And already we receive, me as a member of the Board of Trustees, we receive a lot of questions from Kenyans since that, statement came out in the public, asking what will happen to these children. Because these children are also linked to families who are not necessarily destitute. So they ask this question: what will happen to these children whom we had entrusted in the hands of the government through child welfare to look after these children? Because either they are orphans, so the extended family members ask these questions. And these are the same questions, this is the same question they've asked me, that what will happen to these children if the government ceases to give support? That's why, like I told you at the outset, that I don't believe the government would want to do such a thing. I don't think so. I don't think a government would do that.
And what is the criteria of taking kids to support them? Because there are some kids I saw that they're going back home, but they're being educated by Child Welfare Society of Kenya.
Yeah,
there are some who live there.
Exactly.
Yes.
These children they are in their diversity. It's a spectrum of things in that what I was calling child protection ideology. It's a spectrum. And each child is different. Each circumstance is different. Right from the child who's been abandoned, who is 1 year old, to a child who has gone to university. Each one is different. And our desire always is to link back the child to society, because that is the wholesome way a child, a human being, can grow up within a natural society, not within the four walls of a building in the name of a children's center or whatever, the ones we are calling temporary places of safety. These are last resort places. So we do all those things in order to make sure that these children become normal again. So each child is different, each circumstance is different, and those who are lucky to not be totally immersed in all this can quickly go back to society.
All right.
Yeah.
Wakili, as we wrap up, we'll take your final comments in regards to what we are talking about, because we, just like you've said, we have the best laws, but unfortunately when it comes to the implementation phase, and when we're talking about our kids, I think it's a matter that we should always be prioritizing our children's rights.
We each have a right, or rather a responsibility, to take care of the children in society, and so let's ensure to do that. These are some of the most vulnerable people we have, and so we need to make sure that their rights are catered into, taken into consideration. Let's protect our children. They have no one else to speak for them but us.
Thank you.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, like what you're saying is that we appeal to the government to realize that these children are our children. They are a product of our social and economic circumstances that have pushed these children outside their families. And therefore, these children actually belong to the government. And the government should continue funding, not only that, but increase the funding tremendously. Because if you compare the amount that we receive, child welfare receives to do these programs, in the scheme of things, is actually very little money. We're talking of something like 900 million. That's not a lot of money, considering looking after 700,000 children at 900 million shillings per year.
It's a bargain.
It's not a big deal.
Yes.
Remember, these are children.
Yeah.
Our children.
Home, clothing,
yes,
medical,
yes,
education.
And by protecting and caring for these children, we're also solving a future problem in Kenya, because these children will be useful citizens of this country. They won't fall off the social map and get into crime and things like that.
Okay.
So the government actually should look at that way, the way we are looking at it positively ourselves, that there's no way the government could actually wake up one morning and say, we are throwing 700,000 children under the bus.
Okay, unfortunately we are out of time, and thank you so much. That has been Bill Rutto, who's a trustee of the Child Welfare Society of Kenya, and just next to him we have Mupa Mbetsa, who is a family lawyer and an advocate of the High Court. We have been looking at children's rights and welfare, and we are hoping that indeed the government does not pull that plug, because Child Welfare Society of Kenya is supporting over 700,000 children in Kenya. The good thing is that we are all funding that. There is no complaint that some donors could pull out. We as Kenyans are funding that. Many thanks indeed for joining us, and now giving the baton to the Swahili desk with Kurunzi Mashinani and Tamrini. I'm Njue. Many thanks indeed for joining us.